It was the middle of winter, snowflakes were like feathers flying across the sky, and there was a queen sitting by the window sewing. The door frame is made of jet black ebony. The queen sat sewing but was so busy watching the falling snow that she pricked her finger with the needle, and 3 drops of red blood fell onto the white snow. Looking at the bright red color standing out on the snow, the queen thought to herself, "If only I had a child with skin as white as snow, lips as rosy as the color of bright red blood, and hair as black as the ebony wood of this window frame, wouldn't and #39, it be great?" Not long after, she gave birth to a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as lipstick and hair as black as ebony, so she named her daughter Snow White. But soon after the child was born, the queen died. After a year of mourning, the king took another wife. The new queen is beautiful, but has an arrogant and extravagant personality. She will be mad when she hears that there is someone more beautiful than her. This woman has a magic mirror. Whenever she stands and looks at herself in front of the mirror, she often asks, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" The mirror replied, "My queen, you are the most beautiful person in this country." The queen was very pleased, because she knew that the mirror spoke the truth. The older Snow White is, the more beautiful she is. When Snow White was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as the morning sun and more beautiful than the queen herself. Once the queen sat in front of a mirror and asked, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" The mirror replied, "Dear queen, you are absolutely beautiful here, but Snow White is even more beautiful." The queen was startled when she heard that. Her face turned pale with jealousy. From then on, every time she caught a glimpse of Snow White, she was upset, angry, and then hated her. Her jealousy and envy became more and more intense, making her angry and restless day and night. She called a hunter and said, "Take this girl deep into the forest, I Don and number 39. Want to see her face anymore. You should kill it and bring its liver and lungs back to me to prove you killed it." The hunter obeyed and led the girl into the deep forest. But when he pulled out his knife to stab her, the little girl cried and said, "Oh my God, dear hunter, please let me live. I will run away in this wild forest. I swear I will never return." Palace again. Seeing the beautiful girl, the hunter felt sorry for him and said, "Go hide in the forest. I and number 39. Am so sorry." Uncle thought, and quat, "Then maybe a wild animal will eat her," and quat, but anyway, he felt relieved because he didn't and #39 have to kill someone. At that moment, a young wild boar jumped out. He stabbed it to death, took its liver and lungs, and brought it back to the queen as proof. The cruel stepmother ordered the kitchen to stir-fry liver and lungs for her to eat. She thought it was Snow White and number 39's liver and lungs, so she tried to eat it until it was all gone. The unfortunate little girl was left alone in the vast forest. She was scared and looked bewildered at the leaves and grass, not knowing what to do. Suddenly she started running, stepping on thorns and sharp rocks. Wild animals circled around her, but none of them touched her. The girl kept running and running until it was dark when she saw a small house and immediately went there to rest. In the house, all the objects are so small, pretty and clean that they cannot be faulted. In the middle of the house there is a table covered with a pure white cloth. On the table are 7 beautiful small plates. Each plate has a small spoon, a small knife, a fork, and next to it is a small and pretty glass. On both sides of the wall were 7 small beds, one after another, each bed covered with snow-white towels. Hungry and thirsty, Snow White ate a little vegetable and cake from each plate and drank a sip of wine from each glass, because she did not want to let anyone lose their share. Having been running all day in the forest, she was now tired and wanted to lay down on the bed to sleep. But the bed didn't and #39 fit. One was too long. The other was too short. On the 7th day, Snow White lay down and fell asleep. When it was dark, the owners of the little house returned. They were the 7 dwarfs who usually dug for iron ore in the mountains. They lit 7 beautiful lamps, and when the lights shone throughout the house, they felt as if someone had entered the house, because everything was no longer the same as when they left the house to go to work. The first uncle said, "Who sat on my beautiful chair?" The second uncle said, "Who ate from my small plate?" The third uncle said, "Who ate my cake?" The fourth uncle said, "Who tasted the vegetables on my plate?" The fifth uncle said, "Who took my tiny fork to cut something?" The sixth uncle said, "Who took my pretty knife to cut something?" The seventh uncle said, "Has anyone drank water from my beautiful glass?" The other uncles also ran to their bed and cried, "Looks like someone has lied on my bed?" When the 7th uncle looked at his bed, he saw Snow White sleeping. So he called the others to come over. Everyone was surprised. They held 7 lamps to look at Snow White and shouted, "Father, she is so beautiful." All 7 uncles were very happy, did not wake her up, and let her sleep in peace. The 7th dwarf had to sleep in his friend and number 39's bed, each for an hour, and then the night was over. When it was dawn, Snow White woke up and saw the 7 dwarfs standing around and was very scared. But the 7 people were all happy and friendly, asking her, "What is your name?" She answered, "My name is Snow White." The dwarfs asked again, "How did you get to our house?" So she told them how her stepmother tried to murder her, but the hunter let her live and she ran all day in the forest until dusk when she saw their house. The dwarfs told her, "If you agree to take care of the house, cook, make beds, wash clothes, sew, embroider, sweep, and keep the house clean and tidy, then you can stay. With us, you 1 and number 39 lack anything." Snow White said, "Yes, to be honest, I want that too." And from then on, Snow White stayed with the 7 dwarfs. She took care of everything in the house. Every morning the dwarfs went into the mine to look for iron and gold and didn't and #39 return until late in the evening, when their food was already on the table. All day long, Snow White was alone at home. The kind dwarfs reminded and advised her, "Watch out for your stepmother. Soon she will know you are here. Dawn and number 39 let anyone into your house." The queen thought she had eaten Snow White and number 39's liver and lungs, so she was sure she was the only beautiful person in the world. She stood looking at herself in front of the mirror and asked, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" The mirror replied, "Dear Queen, you are absolutely beautiful here, but Snow White is even more beautiful. She is hidden in the mountains, where the 7 dwarfs live together." She was startled, because she knew that mirrors never lie. She immediately thought that the hunter had deceived her and that Snow White was still alive. She sat and thought of a plan to kill Snow White. Until she was called the most beautiful person in the mirror, jealousy would make her lose sleep and eat. Then she thought of a plan. She smeared her face and dressed up to disguise herself as an old saleswoman, making it difficult for anyone to see her. With such a shape, she crossed 7 mountains to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked on the door and announced, "Good goods, beautiful goods. Is there anyone who wants to buy them?" "Buy them?" Snow White poked her head through the window and asked, "Hello, what do you have to sell?" The old woman replied, "Good products, beautiful products, colorful belts." As she spoke, she pulled out a 5-colored belt woven from silk. Snow White thought, "This old lady is so honest that I can let her into the house." Snow White opened the door and bought a beautiful belt. The old woman said, "My child, you look very clumsy in tying it. Come here, let me tie it beautifully and carefully for you." Without any hesitation, Snow White stood in front of the old woman so she could tie a new belt for her. So the old woman quickly tied it. She tightened it tightly, causing Snow White to suffocate and fall unconscious. She said, "Now you are just the beauty of the past." Then she hurriedly left. After a while it was dark. The 7 dwarfs came home and saw their beloved Snow White lying on the ground as if dead, not moving at all. They were very worried. They lifted her up and saw that the belt was tightly tied. They used a knife to cut the rope. Snow White breathed softly and gradually woke up. After listening to Snow White tell what had just happened, the 7 dwarfs told her, "That old saleswoman is probably none other than the evil queen. You must be careful, when we are away, Dawn and number 39. Let who comes into the house." Returning home, the evil queen came to the mirror and asked, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country is as beautiful as me?" "Just like every time," the mirror replied, "Dear Queen, you are absolutely beautiful here, but Snow White is even more beautiful. She is hidden in the mountains, where the 7 dwarfs live together." When she heard that, the queen and number 39's blood boiled with anger. She knew for sure that Snow White had come back to life. She said, "Okay, I will think of another plan to send you back to the underworld." With magical spells, she made a poisoned comb. She disguised herself as another old woman from before, then crossed the 7 mountains to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked on the door and shouted loudly, "Good goods, beautiful goods. Whoever buys it, buy it." Snow White looked out and said, "Go away, I and number 39 am not allowed to let anyone into the house." The old woman said, "But surely no one will stop you from taking this comb and playing around with it?" Then she took out the poisoned comb and held it up. Snow White liked the comb so much that she forgot the instructions and rushed to open the door. When the 2 sides had agreed on the price, the old woman said, "Now let me brush you beautifully." That poor girl didn't and hash 39 suspect anything. She let her comb her hair. But as soon as the comb was stuck in her hair, Snow White was poisoned and fell unconscious. The cruel old woman said, "So the most beautiful person in the country has gone to hell." After saying that, she left. But fortunately it was about to get dark, and after a while the 7 dwarfs arrived home. Seeing Snow White lying dead on the ground, they immediately suspected the stepmother. They searched and found a poisoned comb on her head. As soon as they took the comb out, Snow White woke up and told what had happened. Once again the 7 dwarfs told her to be careful. No one came to open the door. Stepping back home, the queen looked at the mirror again and asked, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" Just like every time, the mirror replied, "Dear Queen, you are absolutely beautiful here, but Snow White is even more beautiful. She is hidden in the mountains, where the 7 dwarfs live together." Hearing the mirror like that, her whole body trembled with anger. She screamed, "Snow White, you have to die. Even if I lose my life, I and number 39 am willing." Then she went into a secluded room in the castle where no one ever stepped foot, and she poured poison into the apple. The ripe red apple looked very delicious, so delicious that everyone who saw it wanted to eat it. But anyone who eats a piece will die immediately. When the medicine was finished, she smeared her face and dressed to disguise herself as a farmer. Then she crossed the 7 mountains again to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked on the door. Snow White stuck her head through the window and said, "You are not allowed to let anyone into the house, because the 7 dwarfs have forbidden it." The old woman said, "That and number 39's okay." She wanted to sell the remaining apples cheaply so she could go home. "Here, let me give you one." Snow White said, "No, you are not allowed to accept anything." The old woman said, "Are you afraid of eating poison? Look here." She split the apple in half. The child ate half of the ripe red apple, and she ate the remaining white apple. The apple was very cleverly poisoned. Only half of the ripe red apple was soaked in poison. Snow White and number 39's eyes eagerly looked at the delicious, ripe apple. Seeing that the farmer was fine eating it, she could and hash 39's hold back any longer and reached out to take it. Half an apple soaked in poison. As soon as she took a bite, she fell down and died. The queen looked at her with glaring eyes, then laughed and said, "White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony." This time, the dwarves won and number 39's try to wake you up again, my child. As soon as she returned to the palace, she immediately asked the mirror, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" This time the mirror replied, "Dear Queen, you are the most beautiful person in this country." At that time, her jealousy subsided and she felt satisfied. As usual, the 7 dwarfs did not return home until evening. As soon as they entered the door, they immediately saw Snow White lying on the ground. Her heart had stopped beating. She could no longer breathe. Snow White was dead. The 7 dwarfs lifted her up, looked for any traces of poison, and wiped her face with water and wine, but it did nothing. "That poor girl is dead, really dead." They put her in the coffin. All 7 people sat around the coffin, crying for her for 3 days straight. Afterwards, they wanted to bury her, but saw that her body was still as bright as a living person. Her beautiful cheeks were still rosy. They said to each other, "Who would have the heart to bury a body like that in the black soil?" They ordered a transparent coffin made of glass, visible from all 4 sides. They placed her inside, engraved Snow White and number 39's name in gold letters and added that she was a princess. Then they carried her coffin and placed it on the mountain, taking turns guarding it. The animals also came to visit and cry for Snow White. Snow White had been lying in the coffin for a long time, but her body was still intact. It looked like she was sleeping, because she was still white as snow, red as blood, and her hair was still black as ebony. At that time, there was a prince from a neighboring country who got lost in the forest and came to the house of the 7 dwarfs to ask for a place to stay for the night. The prince saw a glass coffin on the mountain. Snow White was lying in a coffin with golden words engraved on it. After reading the words, the prince said, "Give me this coffin, I can take as much as you want. Pay." The 7 dwarfs replied, "Even if we exchange all the gold in the world, we would not be satisfied." The prince said, "Then give it to me, because I cannot live without seeing Snow White. I love and respect her as my most beloved person in the world." Hearing the prince speak so earnestly, the kind dwarfs felt compassion and consented. The prince ordered his guards to carry the coffin on his shoulders and bring it back. The guard tripped over a forest root, causing Snow White and number 39's body to bounce up. The piece of poisoned apple she ate shot out of her throat. Immediately after that, she slowly opened her eyes, lifted the coffin lid, sat up and said, "Oh my God, where am I?" Overjoyed, the prince said, "I love you more than anything in this world. Please come with me to my father and number 39's palace. You will be my wife." Snow White agreed to follow the prince to the palace. The wedding of Snow White and the prince was held very lavishly and solemnly. Snow White and number 39's wicked stepmother is also invited to attend. After dressing splendidly, she stood in front of the mirror and asked, "That mirror is on the wall. Who in this country can be as beautiful as me?" The mirror replied, "Dear Queen, you are absolutely beautiful here, but the young queen is much more beautiful." The cruel stepmother cursed him once. She became scared and didn't and #39 know what to do. At first she thought about not going to the wedding, but she could and #39 sit still. She was impatient and wanted to see the young queen and number 39's face. When she entered the room, she immediately recognized Snow White. Scared and panicked, she stood there frozen, not daring to move. But the iron shoes were already on fire. The king punished her and forced her to put her feet on red-hot iron shoes and dance until she fell to the ground and died. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.